Happy New Year! Welcome back to my channel. I'm Simon, and today I am back with one of my favourite videos to film and one of my favourite videos to watch. I have got a watch list going of many of these to watch over the weeks ahead. I feel like I've just said watch too many times. I'm back with my favourite books of 2025. Slight caveat, these are my favourite novels published in 2025. I've done an honourable mentions video where I talk about novels that were published before 2025, as well as my favourite short stories and non-fiction published in 2025. So I'll link that down below. I should also just say I have unintentionally dressed like the Pantone colour of 2026. What's it called? Cloudy puff or fluffy muff or frosty muff or something, I don't know. The look I was going for was cuddly teddy bear / big gay sheep. Maybe I haven't been cloudy puff. That would be apt. Anyway, I was dead set on just doing a top 10 this year. I don't know why. It's an arbitrary number. My favourite number is 12. 12 didn't feel right. I sort of hit on 15, but there were still 5 other books that I wanted to mention. And then I read a book towards the end of the year that changed that all. So you're going to get what you're going to get. We're going to start with the books that were originally at my 16 to 20, which on any given day could switch around. And the first of those is The Dream Hotel by Layla Alami. Now, I have talked about this quite a bit on the channel. I read it on my birthday, actually, earlier last year. I nearly said this year, when I turned 43. I know, don't. The Dream Hotel is about Sarah, who, after being abroad for a conference, comes home and is detained by the Risk Assessment Administration Unit at the airport. And that is where data is collected through AI, and an algorithm can tell if you're going to commit a crime, and it believes Sarah is. And so she ends up in the Dream Hotel, which is not as dreamy or hotel-y as it sounds. And we follow her there as she gets to know other people who have been detained. And I don't want to say more than that. It opened me up, sounds a bit wrong, to wanting to head to a lot more speculative fiction this year. So if you have any speculative fiction recommendations, please let me know in the comments down below. I would be delighted. Then
I talked about this in my last video. I did my last book haul of the year. I'll link that down below if you missed it.
Misinterpretation by Lydia Joga. I just have not stopped thinking about this book since I read it. It's about an unnamed translator from Albania who gets far too, oh, here it comes, my word of the moment, embroiled in the lives of people who she is translating for. And in a lot of ways, that's because she's escaping her own marriage in many ways and her life at home in New York. But also, there's an interesting link between the trauma they've been through and the trauma she went through back home. And at some point, she does go home. And so this book becomes also a book about, well, misinterpretation, miscommunication, but the thing that I really love in fiction, where it looks at different cultures and how they come together, how they merge, how they repel, how, all that stuff. I just really, really love it. And this did it both ways, because she has come from Albania to America, so has gone through that transition, and then goes back and sees how things have shifted for her. And yeah, I just thought this was fab. 2 books that I guess were my books of the summer. And the first of those is Waist Deep by Lenia Maja Ernst, translated by...
Why does it not say on the cover? Publishers should know better. And I can't find a page.
Translated from Danish by Sherilyn Nicola Hellberg. And this is about a group of school friends who get together after having not seen each other for quite some time. And there are various different tensions and have been various different dalliances in their past that start to come to the fore. This is one of the sexiest books I have ever read. I fancied absolutely everyone, and I couldn't wait to see what shenanigans would unfold, and shenanigans do. Honestly, it's absolutely brilliant, as is The Hounding by Zenobi Purvis. This is all about the Mansfield sisters and is based on a true historical incident. And this is such a brilliant summer gothic novel. This is about the Mansfield sisters, I was saying, and this happens in a particular heat wave in the 1800s in the Oxfordshire countryside. And the girls are quite different, or are seen as being very other and different by the people in the village who actually believe they can turn into dogs, hence the title. And it is so much fun whilst also being really poignant and just great historical feminist fiction. Would highly, highly recommend. And then last but not least, we have The Boy from the Sea by Garrett Carr, and this is set in 1970s Ireland, where we meet Ambrose in a small fishing town, and a baby is discovered on the shore and he takes it in, and Brandon, as his name, becomes part of the family, and we follow on as Brandon gets older and the people's fascination with him, which starts off being like, well, obviously it's a lost child, so they're really, really intrigued, but carries on as certain things happen. And there's a wonderful choral voice in here, which is the town talking as time passes, that I've not ever seen done quite like this before, and absolutely love. But just overall, the writing was wonderful. This was a real unexpected hit for me. I thought this was absolutely brilliant. Now, there is a book that I read at the end of the year which I could, on any given day, potentially swap out for those. So this is my first cheat, and that is the last book I read in 2025, Rapture by Emily Maguire. And I need to rethink what I pick as my last book for the year, because a similar thing happened with Robbie Arno's Limberlost when I read that at the end of one year. And if I'd read it earlier in the year, I think this would probably be in my top 10. This is all about Agnes, the daughter of a priest in 19th century, if I get this right, Mainz, and her options are very limited. She's either going to become a nun or a wife. Those are the only two options she has. However, Agnes doesn't want to do that. Now, I don't want to spoil this for any of you, but Agnes escapes and becomes John the Englishman, and escapes to a monastery and then becomes part of a commune near Athens, and it's just incredible. And I got so emotionally invested in this book. So I'm thrilled that I read it and it was my last read of the year. I don't know why I'm not putting it in my top 10, but it just, because actually if I had read it earlier in the year, it would be.
I'm back. I had a quick drink break and then have been invaded by an Oscar, and also the sun's doing something funny. It's not a bookish Jesus moment, but it's something. Let's start as we mean to go on in 2026, a little bit haphazardly.
My official top 15 books. So at number 15, we have Eowyn Ivy's Blackwood's Blue Sky. I am a big Eowyn Ivy fan. I've loved both of her previous books. And this is a book set in the wilds of Alaska, which Eowyn writes about so beautifully in all of her books. And we meet Birdie, who is a single mum. She's really struggling, and she meets Arthur, who is an outsider to the town, and a relationship starts. But Arthur has secrets, and that's all I will say. If you haven't read Eowyn Ivy before, you've just got some absolute corkers ahead of you. Really, really great. And at number 14, we have The Artist by Lucy Stees. Now, if you told me back at the beginning of 2025 that one of my favourite books of the year would be a book about art and artists, I've said I don't think so. It is so. And what Lucy does with this book, I just think is wonderful. It's set in Provence in the 1920s, where we meet Joseph, who is an aspiring journalist, and he has been called to the house of a very famous artist. What follows on is how he becomes, I'm going to say it again, embroiled, and also becomes a muse. There is some really interesting foreshadowing in the book as it opens that I was worried was going to, and I'm being very careful what I say because I don't want to spoil it for you, but I was worried it might spoil it, and it totally didn't for me. I was hooked by this. And Lucy creates such a vivid world of this artist and the art that he creates that I had to check that Tartuffe wasn't real. It's just brilliant, and I'm thrilled that this seems to be doing incredibly well, and deservedly so. I can't wait for whatever Lucy writes next. At number 13, a book that is not very easy to get if you're outside of America, but one I was intrigued to read because it is one of the books that Sarah Jessica Parker has published by her imprint SJP Lit. It is Coleman Hill, a novel by Kim Coleman Foote. And it is a novel, however, the author describes it as biomythography because this is her fictionalising her family's history all the way to the early 1900s and the Great Migration. We meet Celia and Lucy, who are friends who, as I said, are part of the Great Migration, and follow them and their relationships and their relationship with each other, and the legacy of each member of the family carry on throughout. And I just really, really loved this. I thought it was really different. I love the fact that there are pictures of the characters in the book from actual archives. And to my shame, I didn't know much about the Great Migration, but this book has certainly made me want to find out more. So if you've any recommendations of books, be they fiction or non-fiction, that look at that, I would be really, really interested to read them, because yeah, I thought this was fab. And then at number 12, we have The Book of Guilt by Catherine Chidgey, another speculative book that I really, really enjoyed this year. This is set in an alternate 1970s where we meet Vincent, Lawrence and William, who are triplets, and they're living in a crumbly old house with Mother Morning, Mother Afternoon and Mother Night, who are always watching. And as we go on, we get to know an alternate character, Nancy, who is living in the suburbs with her parents, but something seems a little bit off there too. And I just loved this. I inhaled it. Catherine Chidgey can really tell a good job. It has made me want to go back to Catherine Chidgey's previous works. Also, this is a prime example of a case where I've read the author before and it's been possibly right but wrong time, or maybe right author, wrong book. I read Remote Sympathy when it was up for the Women's Prize and did not get on with it, but now I'm questioning whether I should go back, because we do change as readers as we get on in years, not to keep going on about that. I thought this was absolutely fantastic, and again would like to head to more speculative fiction this year. And then at number 11 we have Women and Children First by Alina Grabowski, and this is set in a small rural fishing enclave, I think is the description, in America, where at a house party a young girl dies, and through 10 different narrators we hear about all the goings on in that village that lead to that event, because 5 of the characters share their stories up to the tragic incident. Is it an accident? Is it not? That's one of the big pieces of the book and what the book looks at. And then after the incident we head to 5 different characters, and you see their lives interweave with the characters that you've met before. That is not an easy thing to pull off, and Alina Grabowski does it brilliantly. Every voice felt different to me, and I really enjoyed some foreshadowing as you got through certain characters through certain narratives in the lead up to the tragic incident, and then also how you saw them and changed your views on them in hindsight with the 5 women that you meet afterwards. I thought that was done so deftly, and yeah, I can't wait to see what Alina Grabowski writes next. It's another of the books published by Sarah Jessica Parker's publishing house, SJP Lit. She's got good taste, has SJP. On to the official top 10. That was a drum roll that's slightly scared Oscar. Whoops. At number 10, we have a book that, again, is one that I only talked about on the channel very recently when I did my last wrap-up of the year, but it is A Language of Limbs by Dylan Hardcastle. And this is the tale of Limb 1 and Limb 2, who are 2 women who we meet when they are, I don't know how else to use this term, but caught out as being lesbians, and how the people around them react is very, very different. And we follow, in an almost sliding doors kind of way, their lives post that. And it looks at how being on the receiving end of homophobia can quite literally change you as a person, and how that affects you going forward, and how acceptance can do very different things, but also just how one moment in your formative years can change everything so much. And I say it's almost sliding doors because these 2 women, I've got to be really careful how I put this, but it's one of those books where the 2 women who are going through, like I said, very different lives, are living through the same periods of history, and at certain points are in the same place. And again, looking at how differing ways their lives have gone, how they react to those things. It looks at a dark period of history in Australia for queer people, but it has this energy and this vibrancy and kind of hope to it. I mean, there's a lot of sad shit that goes on all way, but it is a book with hope, and that is something that I don't often find in queer stories. The way Dylan Hardcastle wrote this is absolutely brilliant and very emotional and a real wallop of a book. Cannot recommend this enough.
We need to read a lot more Australian fiction in 2026.
At number 9, we have A Little Trickery by Rosanna Pike. And this was one of my favourite books that was up for the Women's Prize in 2025. This is set in the Tudor period, but a very different Tudor period, well, at least for me, to read about than I'm used to, in the fact that this is very much set in the rural countryside. So we meet Tib, who is, well, a vagabond and then an orphan and has to fend for herself. And we follow the people she meets, one particular relationship that becomes...
Oh, it's hard. I don't want to give any spoilers because this book has so many twists and turns and surprises in it.
We follow Tib as she fends for herself, along with the people that she meets and one particular incident that...
Oh, I can't say anymore.
Basically, it's just blinking brilliant, and if you've not read it yet, you really blinking should. Then at number 8, another book that I only talked about recently on the channel, and that was Nova Scotia House. This is about Jerry and Johnny.
And, let me just double check I've got this right, yes.
Johnny met Jerry when he was a young man. Jerry was quite a lot older. They started a relationship and they built this beautiful safe space in Nova Scotia House. And when the book opens, Jerry has died, and so we go back through Johnny's recollections to when they met, how they built this space, and then how it feels to have this sacred space with this huge space now left in it. And the way this looks at grief, the way this looks at love and nature and creating our own little idylls wherever we can, no matter where that may be. I thought this was so moving and wonderfully done. I cried loads, also found something incredibly sexy, but there was quite a lot of weeping. Charlie Porter is an author that I had read before because I read an essay he wrote about allotments that I absolutely loved, and would really now want to go back and read both of his non-fiction books. Thrilled to have read this, absolutely loved it, highly recommend. Then at number 7, we have Love Forms by Claire Adam, one of my favourite books from the Booker Prize long list this year. This starts in the 1980s where we meet Dawn, who is living in Trinidad. She is 16 and pregnant and is on her way to have the baby and give it up for adoption. Now this chimed with me because my mum was pregnant with me when she was 16 in the early 1980s, and I know that things could have gone very differently for me. I think regardless of my personal experience, I would love this anyway. I'm desperate for mum to read it though, I should say that. Anyway, we then meet Dawn several decades later where she is still looking for the child that she had adopted. She's living in the UK, she has other children, she's divorced. And one of the things that I loved about this was I couldn't always trust her as a narrator, which I don't know if was intentional or not. Regardless, I was really fascinated by her and her story and incredibly emotionally invested. And yeah, like I said, I really want mum to read this because I would be fascinated to hear her thoughts on it. We're almost there. We're almost at top 5. Number 6 is On the Calculation of Volume 1 by Solva Bala, and this is translated
by... Oh, is it on the back? No, it's not even on the back.
By Barbara J. Havland. This is about Tara, who wakes up on November the 18th when it was November the 18th yesterday, and then the next date is the same, and on and on and on. And what's fascinating about this is we meet her as we're heading to a year of this happening, but it's not the beginning. So we're going backwards and forwards with her, which I thought was really brilliant. I think we start on day like 100 and something. Is that right? Have I made that? Yeah, 121. It is a book that contemplates our place in the world, how we change it by just our presence, but also how the presence of those around us change us. And it's a book in a way that's really about loss and grief, and aging and celebrating what you have and being in the moment. And yeah, there's a lot going on here. Like there isn't a huge amount of plot, and I do normally like quite a plotty book, but I was just transfixed by this. Really, really excited to read the rest of this series. Although, because of my rule with series and the fact that I don't think you can put a book that's second, third, fourth, or up to seventh, as the future ones of these will be, in your favourites, you might not see another Salvage Barla book in my favourites going forward.
Until she writes something else, but I don't want to do that yet because I want to finish those.
But that does link to a slight cheat before we head to my top 5, because if I didn't have that rule, then Elizabeth Strout's Tell Me Everything would definitely be in my books of the year. Now, this is a book that could be seen as a culmination of many of Elizabeth Strout's previous books, predominantly the Lucy Barton books, but also, I haven't read these others, but Olive Kitteridge and Bob Burgess. That said, it can also be seen as a starting off point, because this is where Lucy Barton and Olive Kitteridge finally meet, introduced by Bob. I just loved it, absolutely loved it, but it is, well, technically I think going to be the last in the series, so yeah, I can't really count this one. But Elizabeth Strout has a standalone book coming this year, and I think that will probably be in my top reads of 2026. But now, number 5, it's getting very exciting. Well, hopefully it's been enjoyable, if not exciting, the whole way through until now. But at number 5, we have Harriet Tubman live in concert by Bob the Drag Queen. I absolutely love this book. I have banged on about it all year. This is another speculative novel set around now where people from history are just suddenly appearing or reappearing. One such person from history is Harriet Tubman, who was a huge part of the Underground Railroad, and she wants to make an album. And so we meet Darnell, who is going to be her music producer. And Darnell is a queer black man, and it looks at his experiences of America now alongside Harriet's experiences of America then, and just so powerful, also so funny in parts, but utterly heartbreaking and devastating in others. And also you can go on Spotify and listen to some of the music, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend that after you've read it. I just thought this was superb, and really, really hope there's going to be more novels from Bob the Drag Queen, because what an absolute corker. Then at number 4, we have Endling by Maria Reaver. And this is about 3 women who are all part of the bride tourism in Ukraine. It's set before the invasion and conflict as we in the Western world know it, although that had been rumbling on for a while, and you do get insights into that. Eva is doing this bride tourism because she is saving money to go towards saving endling snails, so the last of their species, including Lefty. Along with Eva, we also meet 2 sisters, and one who is a translator for the brides and the potential grooms, and I guess who has the wit, whereas her sister has the beauty. And I found that a really fascinating discussion within the book. And the sisters are plotting an act of activism that Yeva, I'm going to say it again, gets embroiled in. And this book looks at politics, it looks at the Western world's complicity. It gives you a lot of insight into the history of Ukraine and how long things have been going on, plus that moment of change. And the book becomes quite meta in parts because of Maria Reaver's personal history and family history, and does some very unexpected things. And there is a section in here called Interlude that I think is some of the best writing I have ever read. It's really, really incredible. It shows that the next 3 books are really, really, really incredible, because on another year, this could have been my favourite book of the year. I thought it was just wow. We are on to the top 3. We're nearly there. Number 3 is A Room Above a Shop by Anthony Shapland, and this is a book that I read right at the start of the year, and it's a really short, sharp shock of a book in the best kind of way. So the book is set in 1980s rural Wales, and we meet B and M, two men who are queer but not out, and who spot each other and see something in each other that leads to a relationship, and we follow on from there with the AIDS epidemic in the background, with all the homophobia that brought. And what I thought, well, for one, I found this incredibly haunting. It's also a very sexy book. It takes you on all sorts of emotions. You've got that beautiful budding of first, well, lust actually at first, then the building of love. I won't spoil anything, but also you've got that. I've not read many books about what it's like to be queer in the rural countryside, be it now, be it in history, and that is something that I want to see a lot more of. So when I do, like in this book, I want more of it. So if you know of any books about those things, let me know, please. I mean, one non-fiction book I can think of is On the Red Hill by Mike Parker, which I talk about all the time and absolutely loved. And interestingly, it's also set in Wales. An absolute gem of a book. And again, if you've not read it, why not? You should, because it's brilliant. We are at the top two. I wonder if you can guess what my number one is. At number two in my books of the year for 2025, aka last year, we have Helm by Sarah Hall. This novel is all about Helm, the only named wind in Britain that has been present for thousands of years. I can't do this book justice in a couple of minutes. I do talk about it a little bit more in the aforementioned last wrap-up of the year that I did back in December.
Isn't it funny? We're only on, well, as I'm filming this, it's the 2nd of January, and yet December feels like, I was going to say literally a year ago it is, but you know what I mean. Anyway.
Suffice to say, I loved it. I love the way that Sarah takes us into the lives of so many different characters, sometimes through their viewpoint, sometimes through Helm as it witnesses them. And we go from Neolithic all the way to present day. This is a patchwork novel where you as the reader are putting it all together because you're being told it in all sorts of different time periods and shifting around and alternating. And to manage to write thousands of years into this and me feel like I have really lived it, with lots of different characters, some that you have to say goodbye to early on, some that get introduced then halfway and you fall in love with, and I just think this is absolutely incredible. And again, easily on another year, very much like this, and indeed, as I said, Endling, could easily have been my book of the year. Can't recommend it enough. I think it is quite spectacular and something very different. So at number one, I don't think this will be a surprise to many or any of you, to be honest. It's the first book that I read in 2025 and remained my favourite for the whole year through. It is Dusk by Robbie Arno, and this is the story of twins who are living on, well, below the breadline in... Now, we could have a discussion as to whether it's an alternate Tasmania or a historical Tasmania or a dystopic Tasmania, and that's one of the things that I think is so wonderful about this book. It's timeless in many ways. Anyway, they're living below the breadline and they hear of a puma called Dusk who is killing shepherds and has a bounty on her head, and so they decide that they're going to try and trap her and claim that bounty, and we follow on as they go on a tale of adventure. And I just couldn't put this down. And I know I've said that I don't believe in the perfect book, however this comes pretty close because it does several things that I really love in one. One, it's a really brilliant, ripping yarn that will have you on the edge of your seat. Two, it's a book with real themes. It's really looking at what we are doing to the world, what we're doing to nature. It's looking at poverty. It's looking at prejudices. There's so much in here. And it's a book that I just didn't want to end. And it's also a book that Robbie Arnott leaves you to decide what may or may not happen, and has one of the best endings I think I've read in a book. And I hope that's not a spoiler. I hope that's like, if you've not read it yet, a drive to get to it, because once you do, you'll pick it up and you'll just whiz through it, and yeah, it's just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So there we are. That's it. That's 2025 wrapped. I would love to know in the comments down below if you've read any of these and what you thought, whether you agree, whether you disagree. Let's have a chat about it in the comments going forward. Looking forward to it. I'd also love to know what your top 3 or even top 5 books of 2025 were. I'm always looking for more book recommendations. Happy New Year again. I hope that 2026 is a year brimming with wonderful times, wonderful books, and more wonderful conversations. And I will see you in another video very, very soon. Bye.